The question is,
Booby prize.
are you seeking a call?
I am. That's why I stood up and said, Mr. Chairman.
I didn't hear the Mr. Chairman.
He is a quiet young man.
Must have been very dulcet, so I'll accept the member said it and I'll give him the call. Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not because I'm a polite old gentleman, but I thought Leanne Dalzell was going to take the call before me, but apparently she wants to listen to her learned colleague first, and then she might. Well.
Who needs enemies?
Thank you. I think I'll be voting with my colleagues opposite at the GA committee tomorrow to get a decent chair. Mr.
The best chair we've ever had on that committee.
Oh, that's not true. I used to chair it years ago. Mr. Chairman, it does. Mr. Chairman, I just like to make a point in relation to the overall approach to the bill before I drive down into the detail of Schedule 2, which of course amends Schedule 1, not the Schedule 1 of this bill, but the Schedule 1 of the 1961 legislation. And I would just like to ask the question of my Green colleagues, why are they opposed to making an international financial organisation more transparent and more accountable? I mean, I just find it, I cannot see why having an organisation which is shifting the balance of power away from the domination of the United States into Asia, being fairer on countries around the world, is getting the opposition from the Green Party. To me, it just doesn't seem logical. If they really believe that the IMF should be abolished, then it is relatively easy to draft an amendment within this bill which would take out the entire schedule of the 1961 Act and would thereby take out our membership of the IMF. But, Mr. Chairman, I've been listening carefully in my... I think members are allowed to say that they haven't always been in the chamber themselves. I haven't always been in the chamber after this debate. I've been here for a reasonable proportion, too much you might say, Mr. Chairman, of this debate. But I've been listening to it, and I'm yet to hear a call from Green members to explain why they are opposed to the IMF becoming more democratic. As I say, if they're totally opposed to the IMF, then they should move an amendment to the legislation which makes their position clear. Not hard to do, drafted in 10 seconds to make it work, but it appears that we're having silence on the substance, but votes being cast without any sort of reasoning, and I'd genuinely like to understand from people who I want to work with in the future. People just about always have a reason for doing something, and I'd like to try and understand what that reason is. But I think for that to occur, there has to be a call. Now, getting back to Schedule 2, which, and I must, with a tiny bit of criticism of my colleague, the Honourable David Cunliffe, I think he didn't focus on the fact that Schedule 2 amends Schedule 1, and it's Schedule 1 of the International Finance Agreements Act 1961, and that is, it's actually. And what we see, actually, Mr. Chairman, in looking at it, is a difference in parliamentary drafting style since 1961. Because in 1961, it was called the first schedule, and now it is called Schedule 1. And I would like an assurance from the Minister and the Chair that, notwithstanding that difference in drafting style, we are talking about amendments to the first schedule, even though we're calling it Schedule 1. because the naming is different. Now, I don't expect, even if there was a debate about it, it would get to the Supreme Court. I think that most of us know that what we're talking about, but to use the wonderful language of the Heke Parata, the Minister of Education, Mr. Chairman.
Honourable Trevor Mallard.
I would like a belt and braces approach to this, and to get an assurance that our trousers are not going to fall down because we say Schedule 1 and not the first schedule. And so getting an assurance that right in the even in the preliminary part of this particular clause in the legislation, and we are referring, of course, to Clause 6, which brings in Schedule 1 amended in the manner set out by Schedule 2 of the Act. And what happens here, Mr. Chairman, is that it sets up the fact that the Executive Board shall consist of 20 Executive Directors who are elected by the members with the Managing Director as a Chairman. And I think it is. I think it is. There's not a high level of understanding in the House, and I'm trying to assist the new member for Hamilton West with his understanding in this particular area, because what we do have here are executive directors who represent either a country or a group of countries, but when they vote, they have an uneven number of votes. It's not like they're on a board and they all stick their hands up and you count the votes. One of the group with the most hands up wins. In this particular case, they carry. It's a bit. And Darian Fenton will sort of remember this approach, and it's a card vote. It is effectively a card vote, and it would probably remind me of a Labour Party conference, where some people stick their and no, we still have cards. We still have cards at the Labour Party conference. If you're representing the LEC, you have 2 on there, or if you're each of the MPs get 1. Darian Fenton always had 50 on a card and about 75 more in a pocket, Mr. Chairman, when she was exercising the votes. And that is the sort of approach. That is the sort of approach that you have on the executive board of the IMF, where people do not carry equal votes. It's not democratic in the sense of one man or one woman a vote. And just looking in here, it appears that as far as the executive directors in this particular section, there is the possibility contemplated of there being a woman executive director.
How many are there currently?
I have no idea how. I have my doubts if there are any. But I must say that there are some pretty competent people who have gone from the New Zealand Treasury, including women, to work in this area. But I think it's fair to say that not currently, is my understanding, at the executive director level. The executive directors are to be elected every 2 years, and I think it's fair to say that there's been, over a period of time, a degree of dissatisfaction with the performance of some of the executive directors. It's some of them have worked very hard, but others have regarded it as a bit of a sinecure, and what having the 2 yearly elections, I think, is designed to do is to ensure that there is less of a sinecure in those arrangements. What it does do is give the Board of Governors, which is, for those people who missed my earlier contribution, is generally a group of the finance ministers or treasurers or their equivalents from. Sorry? I think the US are probably accepting of the changes, because if they weren't, in reply to the interjection of the Honourable John Banks, if they weren't accepting of the changes, they almost certainly wouldn't be happening. But I think it's also fair to say the United States has not been in the forefront of the promotion of the modernisation and the shift of power from themselves to Asia as far as this venerable institution is concerned. I think it's fair to say that they've probably over a period of time been relatively cautious in the area, and as I say, they will they will lose some of their power. Mr. Chairman? Chairman?
Honourable Trevor Malcolm.
Mr. Chairman, I think there is in section 3.1 we do get to the point which my colleague, the member for Christchurch Central, has been interjecting about for Christchurch East.
Will be again as the result of the boundary changes, but you know, never mind.
Well, the member. Who, do they have a member? Oh, Nikki Wagner. Is Nikki Wagner the member for?
She's going to lose the schools.
Okay, we'll go. Okay, the member who is a member for Christchurch East, but will probably beat Nikki Wagner, interjected.
No, the boundary changes.
No, well, just leave it. The member for Christchurch East who will probably beat Nikki Wagner. What's wrong with saying that? Is that accurate? Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
That's accurate. That member interjected and asked, what about the possibility of a woman being an executive director? Now, that is, I think it's fair to say that in section 3B to D of Article 12, that is expressed, I think, in gender-neutral terms. But when we get down to section 3I and 1, that's right. We then get. That's right. We then, as with the previous section, we don't appear to contemplate the possibility of a woman being an executive director, or are we saying if there is a woman an executive director, they can't have an alternate? Are we again? I'd be interested in the view of the Minister and the Chair on this, as to, because it only appears to give male executive directors the power to appoint alternates, whether in fact that is the case, or whether there is an overriding clause hidden away somewhere in the legislation. Although I think it's pretty unusual in 1961 legislation. I don't think they'd say in all cases his means her. And remembering that this is not for interpretation in the end by the New Zealand system, it's for interpretation within the IMF. I think there is a definite issue to be sorted out, and I would be interested in the Greens' position on that. You know, do the Greens think? Would they like to take a call and tell us whether women executive directors should have equal rights to the men? No, that. I think they should, but you know, if people are opposed to, and maybe that's the reason. Maybe I have stumbled on the reason why the Greens are opposed to this. It's because hidden away in it there are some sexist clauses.
That's true.
Well, I mean, if that was the reason for voting against it, it would be not a totally unreasonable reason for doing it. But I'd just like to hear them say it rather than. You're prepared to take a call and tell us. That's very good. I think I've about another 7 minutes and you can have it, Mr. Chairman. And what is also and it is slightly unusual here because Schedule 2, which is amending Schedule 1, does go over quite a number of areas and does some pretty substantive updating. But on the basis that the Greens have indicated that they want to clarify their position, I'm happy to sit down and if necessary, to follow them afterwards.
The question is that the question.
Mr. Chairman. Quickly,
well, Maggie Barry.
No, she's on a point of order, Mr. Chairman. Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, point of order, Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Chairman, Maggie Barry sat. She was not standing when you called her,
but
and therefore you're not entitled to give her the call.
Well, it's my judgment where I give the call. She stood first and called first. I started to put the motion. I revert to the first person that called, Maggie Barry.